Good morning, everybody. My name is Tom. This is Three Basket Living, the channel where I like to share my thoughts and ideas with everybody else in hopes to encourage some folks out there not to put all your eggs in one basket, and especially when it comes to the food, water, and shelter and security. So this is my third video. And again, I'm going to be talking about composting. Now, that's not what this channel is going to be all about. It's about everything. But I'm a firm believer in the compost. All the benefits that we get from composting, I mean, all throughout nature, composting is taking place. And since we garden and we grow things and we take the fruits of those plants that we grow, we are taking away from the soil. We are taking nutrients. It actually goes against nature to do gardening. So I'm a big believer in putting back into the soil what we take out. And composting is one of those ways we do it. So we're going to talk about the large compost piles and how you can do it in an organic method without big inputs. And I'm going to show you how I'm doing it without turning the compost and also without having access to a water source up there on top of the hill where I'm going to take you this morning. So let's take a ride. Alright, I'm going to try to hold a steady camera just so you kind of get a little bit more feel of our property here and where we're at. So it might be noisy. Maybe I can figure out how to do the music thing, you know, to cut out the noise, but we'll give it a try and see what happens. Give this a try. Put the glasses on here. Hey, I want to say good morning to Ma. Good morning, Ma. Might be a little dark under this tree canopy. here in the field. Let me get set up here, and then I'll talk a little bit about what I got going on here. So these are my large piles that I got going on up here. And I am applying some of the same principles that I have come to learn, or came to the conclusion that what it's all about is the covering when it comes to composting. But anyway, thinking about these container systems and these tumblers and looking in the woods or the forest floor, I realized that when we go out in the woods and what we see laying on the ground, the leaves, the pine needles, the twigs, the fallen grasses, all those things were not decomposing, and they're not. And they're not going to until they get covered from the next year or two's falling of leaves and all that debris, the grasses, the twigs, pine needles. The only thing that the top surface of the woods is providing, or the only purpose of it right now, is that it is providing a protective layer for everything else below that, holding the moisture in for longer periods of time, blocking off some of the breezes and the winds, and blocking off the sunlight. So the other thing that also does, it blocks out the UV rays of the sunlight, because the microbes, which are our largest decomposers in a compost pile, they do not thrive or survive in environments where there's direct impact of the sun because of the UV rays. So that just keyed me in, and light bulbs started going off, and that's why I started covering my compost piles. Now I will tell you, I don't know if you can see in the background, but there's a bigger one, and it's a lot wider. I broke it down so it's not so tall, and I'm still experimenting with that. I used to turn them piles with the tractor. Time consuming, real pain in the butt, but what I found out is that I was doing more damage, to the pile by turning the compost, because as I did, I was losing what moisture I had in there quickly through evaporation. That's why I don't turn them anymore. And because I don't have access to a water source up here on top of the hill. We are about 3/4 of a mile from the cabin. So I have to work with Mother Nature, the rainfall. So when it rains, I just time it and check my piles before a rain to see what the moisture content is and make a determination on whether I want more rain or I don't. For instance, this pile over here, I think will be to your left, I left covered last night because it has a lot of moisture still in it. This one has moisture, but it was drying out after I dug into it about 12 inches. Because of trapping in this moisture is very beneficial, because you got to have moisture. Moisture is the key to all of it. It's more important than your carbon to nitrogen ratio, because if you got all wood chips, eventually they'll break down. If you got all green material, they'll break. Everything's going to break down and decompose on its own. But we do get some benefits by having, a mix of the browns and greens. If we just have a regular pile laying on the ground, or it's in a pallet, or it fenced in with some farm fencing, and you see all that media on the outside of the pile, and there's nothing going on. So I got all this stuff, all this media that I want to break down and decompose, and I got no activity in it because there's no moisture. So what this is about 4 inches to up to 12 inches of media that you want to break down, that is doing nothing but acting as a protective layer for everything internal on the pile. That's why we get all the heat or the activity of the microbes internally on our piles. You can do this on a large scale. You don't have to do it this large. If you got a pile, and it's a fairly large pile, I want to encourage you to cover it. That's where them tumbler systems and those self-contained systems really shine, is because they are providing a protective layer, so you get composting throughout the entire mass of media, just like what's happening in the woods there. If you'll protect those piles, you'll get faster compost, just because you're having more decomposition taking place toward the outer surfaces of that pile, and you'll have a lot less turning to do. But take a look. This pile is full of these big old chunks, and I don't know if you can tell, but I am having so much better success, and it's not deep in there. If I just dig in here just a little bit, I've only got maybe a ½ inch there, and then I got decomposition already taking place. I still have some big stuff in there, but man, there's so much that has broken down already. And I'm not having to dig in, 12 inches before I start getting to the stuff that's broken down. This is what I have come to find out has been so rewarding by providing cover for your compost pile and keeping that environment as optimal as we can for those microbes, and they're going to work. So I'm real happy with that. Okay, see, that's all that dust. Now that is just as dry as can be, and I'm going to try to see, and I feel no heat. All right, now I'm starting to get some moisture. That's from last night's rain. I can tell from the top. All right, so I got about 12 inches there before I start hitting a little bit of moisture and a little bit of heat. And so I got 12 inches on this whole mass that has no microbial activity going on. And if I come up here and turn this, what's going to happen is the moisture that is trapped in there right now from this approximately 12 inches of stuff that is holding that moisture in, this thing will rapidly dry out completely through. So to sum it all up, and thinking about what we are trying to do here is break down material. All I do is I get my media. These two piles here have not been turned. The other large pile has been turned. So as you can see, I have to dig in about 12 inches before I start getting to some heat and some moisture. And it remains uncovered, and I've been doing so for testing purposes. When I dig into this pile right here, which has all these big wood chunks in it as well, all I had to do was dig in about a ½ inch, and I got decomposition taking place already. The inputs that I put into my piles, I put wood ash, some humic acid. I will introduce beneficial microbes, lactobacillus, which I cultivate on my own, and I also introduce some IMOs, indigenous microorganisms, which I also cultivate from my own property, and I'll also incorporate those in there, hopefully on a cloudy day right before it gets to rain. After the rain comes, I come up here and I will bring the tarps and cover the pile and secure them to retain that moisture, provide that protection layer instead of utilizing the stuff that I want to break down, which can range from anywhere from 4 inches to 12 inches or more, depending on how long it goes. That media is providing a protection layer. What I don't want that media to be a protective layer. I want that media to break down. So I'm going to provide the protective layer in the tarps, which mimics nature, and now I'm getting faster decomposition because I'm getting more media decomposing at the same time as instead of just in the inner core. So that's how you do it. That's what I wanted to share with you. I know I'm stuck on compost, but I just want to show you that I am implementing the same procedures and tactics on my large piles that I am on my smaller pile in the container that I built down there by the garden. I flush out a lot of noise, and I start looking at nature, and I started looking at what the benefits of these containers and tumblers were, incorporated into my bigger piles, and it's working awesome. So hope you got something out of it. If you find anything beneficial or you heard anything beneficial to anybody else, please share it with them. You don't have to solicit. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time. Whoa.